was through the influence of the Beatles that millions of youth around the world were almost overnight turned away from Christ to the gurus of the East. Gurus like the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi were given a platform to pass out mantras like candy to the youth. Hippie youth began repeating these mantras, believing that they were in some way scientific, when in fact they were calling out on the names of Hindu gods and demons. Yoga is actually a word that means to yoke and speaks of yoking with pagan gods. God's word warns that these false gods are actually demonic beings, and Jesus Christ warned against the repetitious praying of the pagans.
Well, before the Beatles came around, I don't think Indian spirituality and things like that were an everyday part of Western culture. It was entirely the hippies, thanks to the Beatles, who decided to, go to India and, discover yoga and meditation. Now we all have yoga on every corner. There was never anything like that before they came along.
They really wanted a spiritual revolution, a transformation.
British journalist Gavin Baddeley, who is a member of the Church of Satan, said that it is, quote, easy to see how Crowley might interpret the age of Aquarius as the Eon of Horus. Predicted by Crowley, a lot of people were doing what they willed. He went on to say the free love and wanton drug abuse so central to Crowley were now common practice among many young people. Anger happily announced Crowley's dictum that the key to joy is disobedience, and declared not only was the Eon of Horus upon us, but the Eon was Lucifer. Kenneth Anger, the co-founder of the Church of Satan, said, quote, Christianity has had its day. Crowley said it would be replaced by the Eon of Horus, who is the crowned and conquering child. Kenneth Anger said of his film Lucifer Rising, which was about the rise of Satanism in the 1960s, that it was, quote, a film about the love generation, the birthday of the Aquarian age, showing actual ceremonies to make Lucifer rise, the rebel angel behind what's happening in the world today. Perhaps the best example to date of the evil and destructive fruit of Aleister Crowley's satanic teaching of do what thou wilt is Charles Manson.
If I started murdering people, there'd be none of it left. Because my children are coming. My children are coming.
Charles Manson, the world's most notorious mass murderer, was influenced both by Aleister Crowley and the Beatles. The Manson family, as they would butcher Sharon Tate and her baby and several other people, would paint the words helter-skelter on the inside of the houses with the victim's blood. Susan Atkins stated that Manson would use the Beatles' albums to encourage them to murder.
Charlie played the Beatles' White Album incessantly. He would show us how they switched the word out to in when talking about destruction and how they were encouraging the revolution.
Susan Atkins, who was convicted of 8 of the Manson family murders, told me in our exclusive interviews that she remembers Crowley's name coming up when she was in the Manson family.
I remember Aleister Crowley's name being brought up when I was part of Manson's family. Manson's philosophy, like Crowley's, was do what thou wilt.
Carl Raschke, in his book Painted Black, states, quote, it is known that Manson had a close association with the remnants of Crowley's organizational structure, the OTO, in Southern California. Marilyn Manson is reported to have declared, quote, even Christ wouldn't kill himself for this pitiful America that hides under Christian values. It is time for their world to be destroyed. It is time for a new age, the age of Horus. We must forget this wasted generation and amputate it before the mind rots away with it. Sadder still is that while Charles Manson was only able to influence a relatively small number of people through his music to live wicked and destructive lives, Marilyn Manson is influencing millions of people. Marilyn Manson was reported to declare, when we reach the age of reason, the age of Horus, we can no longer be what our parents, our God, our society would like us to be. Maturity, sensibility, rebellion. 15, this is when we fall. This is Lucifer. David Bowie has been called by Time magazine the most influential of all rock musicians. This is because David Bowie is considered the greatest trendsetter in the history of rock music. Bowie was the first glitter rocker. He was also the forerunner of punk rock and the first to release disco music. He was also the first artist to announce to the media that he was involved in homosexual practices. David Bowie says when he is in Japan, quote, all those little boys are so cute. I just want to take them up into my room. But few realize that David Bowie's success was a result of his Satanism. Bowie admitted, my overriding interest was in Kabbalah and Crowleyism, that whole dark, rather fearsome netherworld of the wrong side of the brain. Bowie declared, quote, rock music has always been the devil's music. You can't convince me that it isn't. Bowie seems to believe that rock music is Satan's vehicle to usher in Crowley's dark satanic age. Bowie declared, quote, I feel that we're only heralding something even darker than ourselves. He said, quote, "I believe that rock and roll is dangerous. It could well bring about a very evil feeling in the West. That's where I see it heading, bringing about the dark era." Bowie has also been known to draw satanic pentagrams on his walls and make hexes. In his song Quicksand, David Bowie sings about being closer to the Golden Dawn, an occult organization that Crowley once belonged to, and then he goes on to sing about wearing Crowley's uniform.
I'm closer to the Golden Dawn, immersed in Crowley's uniform of imagery.
Aleister Crowley can never, ever, and his influence can never be underestimated in this world. Aleister Crowley was an influence upon the Beatles. I'll show you here a graphic of an Ozzy Osbourne album called The Blizzard of Oz, and he wrote a song dedicated to Mr. Crowley. There were other rock and roll artists who sort of said that they got inspiration, as it were, from Aleister Crowley. This man was a dark, evil, black magician.
Aleister Crowley was a deceiver who lied to his followers by promising them freedom and all the while bringing them into satanic slavery. While Crowley claimed that his followers would be free through the practice of do what thou wilt, they were actually brought into satanic bondage, the worst kind of slavery and non-freedom in existence. Notice how Crowley's doctrine of thelema, or will, was really a subtle way of enslaving his followers to Satan. Drug guru Timothy Leary, who admitted that he was being used as an agent to complete the mission of Satanist Aleister Crowley in ushering the new eon of Antichrist, recognized the place of rock and roll and youth brainwashing in the subversive power of music.
I would urge everyone, and that's one of my basic mottos, think for yourself, question authority with your friends, and don't obey authority.
Timothy Leary referred to the Beatles as the, quote, four evangelists, end quote, and said that rock music was as much a, quote, deconditioner as psychedelic drugs. It is designed, he said, to blow your mind and suspend your conditioned reflexes. Listening to a Beatles album is an hour of deconditioning.
Revelations is at hand, man. The end is near. Revelations is at hand, man. The end is near.
Satan is literally brainwashing millions of young people through music. Newsweek went on to report that, quote, the temporal lobes of the brain, just behind the ears, act as the music center. The brain seems to be a sponge for music, and like a sponge in water, is changed by it.
I have to meet you someday, dude. I'm telling you right now. The end of
Marilyn Manson have an influence on you, personally?
Kinda, sorta.
What do you think about him when he tears up a Bible and kind of mocks God in his stuff?
I'm all for it. I'm a Satanist myself.
If anything, they teach you to open your mind a little.
Давайте вслушаемся, пожалуй, в единственно правдивые слова из всех записанных когда-либо Венди Уильямсом и группой Плазматикс на пластинку. Вот что будет, если воспроизвести их в обратном порядке. Когда мы слушаем слова в такой последовательности, то вот что мы слышим. Обманутые не подозревают о том, что их обманывают. Обманутые не подозревают о том, что их обманывают.
Jim Morrison, who also claimed that he was possessed by a spirit, asserted, quote, whoever controls the media controls the mind. The media is the message, and the message is me.
Music is your special film. Dance on fires, get intense.
Jimi Hendrix, as we shall see later, admitted that he was demon-possessed and his music just came through him. Hendrix used his music to help indoctrinate a generation into New Age occultism in preparation for the kingdom of Antichrist. The evil spirit that possessed Hendrix hypnotized audiences and used his music as a subversive tool for youth brainwashing. Jimi Hendrix admitted to Life magazine, quote, I can explain everything better through music. You hypnotize people, and when you get people at their weakest point, you can preach into their subconscious is what we want to say.
Let's take a moment to see what it has to say right here.
Rock guitarist Craig Chaquico says, quote, rock concerts are the churches of today. Music puts them on a spiritual plane.
Says right here, you gotta be saved in order to go to heaven. We will no longer be oppressed by the fascism of Christianity.
Satanist Marilyn Manson has admitted, quote, "I don't know if anyone has really understood what we're trying to do, to lure people in. Once we've got them, we can give them our message."
None of those people outside realize how much power is in this one room. Let them hear it!
Occultist William Burroughs, who claims he became demon-possessed after shooting his wife and also worked on an album with Kurt Cobain, stated, quote, "A rock concert is in fact a rite involving the evocation and transmutation of energy. Rock stars may be compared to priests. For such magic to succeed, it must tap the sources of magical energy, and this can be dangerous."
Were we, the bands, there to invoke the spirits, the gods? Were we pagan? Were we all shamans of equal power, channeling an unknown energy, seeking fluidity? Paul Stanley of KISS put a slightly different spin on a very similar conclusion.
In other ways, I think of myself as kind of like a holy roller preacher. I'm testifying and I'm getting everybody riled up to the power of almighty rock and roll.
John Anderson of Yes acknowledged, music has always been religious. It is the preferred medium for communication with the gods. It's an initiation. In all this, bassist Phil Lesh got right to the bottom line when he said, "Every place we play is church."
Satan so uses rock stars that many fans actually worship them as gods.
They have totally changed my life. They are gods. I love Korn.
They're gods! They're gods! They changed my whole life, man! Whoa! Whoa! Yeah!
Why, Gigi, did you feel a need to defecate in front of a live audience?
Well, my body is the rock and roll temple, and my flesh, blood, and body fluids are a communion to the people. And there are no limits and no laws, and I'll break down every barrier put in front of me till the day I die.
Manzarek described the transformation of Morrison, the Lizard King, as these spirit guides came over him in concert. It was a psychological horror, freak show in the sense of the shaman, the sense of possession. Morrison was the shaman who took people on a mystical journey to a darker psychic realm. And guitarist Robbie Krieger added his perspective. "We were revivalists," he said, "as well as musicians, and wanted our audience to undergo a religious experience." Consider, for example, the words of Ray Manzarek, keyboardist and co-founder of The Doors, as he described his teenage introduction to the dark mysteries of rock and roll while listening to the blues. It was incredible, the most dangerous singing and the most evil implications. The top of my head rose up. Kundalini uncoiled and sent shivers up my spine.
I'm gonna crawl into your window. I'm gonna coil up in your bed.
One chord, over and over, funky, dark, gritty, evil, trance state. My radio was hypnotizing me. This music opened the door to Dionysus, and he leapt in through my ears. Nowhere is the occult world more powerfully realized in contemporary music than in the confluence of DJs, hypnotic rhythms, strobing lights, covert all-night parties, drug usage, and New Age ideologies that define much of the rave subculture.
Your consciousness is expanded because of this supernatural thing that happened to you.
DJs are the high priests of the rave ceremony, responding to the mood of the crowd, with their mixing desks symbolizing the altar, the only direction in which the ravers consistently face. Dancing at raves may be construed as the method by which ravers worship the god of altered consciousness. Medicine drum are modern shamans, he says, the techno-pagans of electronica. They take the listener on an incredible journey into psychedelic trance. And Decker has loads of company. There are hundreds of bands and DJs who view their music in precisely the same way, as a form of techno-paganism, a gateway into trance.